About you, is it true or is it urban myth that you were targeted for assassination?
A saying we have in my office is don't let the facts get in the way of a good story.
It was a complete setup by the FBI as well. So it appears that the FBI was trying to commit political violence all over the country while censoring it or holding it on national media and censoring or blocking the truth from coming out on social media.
Hey guys, it's Ozymandias. I'm here with Zebbodios Hall, who you may remember from my BLM documentary. He had a fiasco with the FBI, and I have him on the YouTube channel to talk about it today. You could go and introduce yourself, Zebb.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Zebbodios Hall, living here in Denver, Colorado. Survivor of FBI entrapment and all the kinds of federal government fuckers, I guess. Hope everyone's doing well.
Yep, and can you just give everybody a quick rundown of what happened and the climate around that time?
During the summer of 2020, everything going on because a man was murdered by the police, and it wasn't more so just signifying or, falling on that man. It goes over the history of abuse to black folks in this country and the continued abuse of black folks in this country, primarily by a federal government. During that time, the FBI and the Department of Justice worked with a trying to use my wording correctly, a chomo, FBI informant with a very violent history that involves SA, trying to get the wording right, SA, rape, and you might have to look up the word chomo. The dude, who they sent down, gathered information on activists throughout the whole protest, probably starting in around April to May. I met up with him around this time. And then I come to find out, that this guy is not a good person towards the end of my time talking with him. But Michael Windecker was helping create violence, promoting violence, and sowing discord within all of the different activist groups. If a lot of people do remember, Denver was one of the biggest places in which protests were happening. And over time, they just fizzled out quite a bit. And it came down to a lot to do with this man and his, supporters, a little crew of people that he had going around doing reconnaissance. Michael Windecker intimidated and, somewhat tricked me into buying him a gun, which I wouldn't have bought if it wasn't for the fear or threat if anything happened to my friends, family, loved ones, and even people I didn't like. Because Michael Windecker was a man who was very violent and threw around threats quite often, and some of those are still found on YouTube. So that's a long, quick rundown, I guess.
Yeah, from what I remember from the Intercept article by Aaron Treverson, who I included in the BLM doc, he was saying that he had a past of making people disappear and being in violent altercations, correct?
That is correct. And I guess you can say, by coincidence, the Department of Justice doesn't have any of the recordings of him threatening me or anybody else. Very convenient, but they have all of these other things.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of the government, I'm pretty sure wasn't a separate person, wasn't Michael Windecker allegedly trying to pressure another person in the Denver scene into doing something to a politician?
Yes, he was trying to get a gentleman named Bryce Shelby and myself to assassinate the Attorney General of Colorado, Phil Weiser, who is currently running for re-election and has not mentioned it at all. Neither one of us wanted to do it because, that'd be stupid. What would it solve? But the FBI ran with the story with local media and some national outlets that they foiled an assassination plot. But the thing is, it was their plot. They put it together. No one wanted to do it. We both backed off, and they never told the truth about that. And during the same time, 2 weeks later, one of the agents that was involved with trying to get Bryce Shelby to assassinate the Attorney General also drove to his house. It was the same agent that went by the name Red who was involved with the Gretchen Whitmer hoax. And to your audience, regardless of political views, it was a complete setup by the FBI as well. So it appears that the FBI was trying to commit political violence all over the country while censoring it or withholding it on national media and censoring or blocking the truth from coming out on social media, as we all see now.
Yeah, and I'll make sure to include some information on Phil Weiser and his socials, but it kind of seems crazy because if you actually did do it, I remember at the time with the the red flag laws, which if people aren't familiar with that, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I remember you told me, but it was that if the government or, the ATF marks you as a mentally unwell person or an at-risk person, you're barred from the possession or sale of a firearm, correct?
Yes, for a year.
Yeah.
And the first usage of it during the year of 2021 was against Bryce Shelby, so it was completely political. And that played along with, I guess inflating Phil Weiser's ego because he was the one who promoted this law here. And regardless of what people feel about that law, I can see what people might feel on both sides and even in between. It's the fact that it was used for political purposes. Bryce Shelby was arrested for the so-called assassination plot of Phil Weiser I believe, in October or November of 2020. But the first uses of the law was 2021, and they used it against Bryce Shelby, and they withheld all the information that was included. There was really no plot that these two black men were going to conduct against a sitting Jewish politician, because that would be stupid. It wouldn't have solved anything. So when they couldn't get us to do anything, they had to resort to lying to the public through the media about what really happened. And since they've been pressed about it, there's been no comment. And the local media outlets here have still, not retracted the statements of the articles or corrected them.
Yeah, and if I recall correctly, I think that Trump at the same time was, not to make it, I'm just putting it in a timeline, but Trump at the time, and I think the Department of Homeland Security was marking a lot of police reform protesters and BLM adjacent groups and people as being violent black supremacist groups or anti-government, and marking them as, extremists. So that definitely would have tied in if that plot would have come to fruition.
Yes, absolutely. And the thing is, I think a great deal of it, I mean, if you're doing that on a national basis, it is racism. But something I also have to look at as well is the fact that even though Trump, we know what he's about, promoted this through his Department of Justice and Homeland Security, it was not refuted or disputed or fought against by the Democrats then or the Democrats now.
Yeah.
And this is not to show any support for Republicans or Trump because I don't like that flavor of coffee. But we have to put the same pressure on the Democrats as well, because if this happened on a nationwide basis, especially in blue Colorado with a blue House and a blue Senate, why haven't they said anything about it? And it leads me to believe that, and I hate to say this, some of what Republicans are saying might be true, that the FBI is working more with the surveillance state than the Republicans are, because we know they're both playing with them. But if you look at the current investigations that are occurring through the weaponization of the federal government hearings, it's pretty damning when Republicans, who have a history of blackness, as we all know, to mention left-wing black activists or stories that have happened while the Democrats play quiet. Democrats refuse to say anything bad about the Department of Justice or any of the surveillance agencies. But in the process, they're kind of betraying everybody else who they pandered to a few years ago. It just seems strange that Tucker Carlson can talk about the Uhuru, the revolutionary group down in Florida, a black socialist group, but you cannot get any Democrats to show any support for them while those folks were just attacked on free speech.
Yeah, exactly, especially with Phil Weiser being a Democrat. So in the aftermath of this, what's happened to the people that were in that group that Michael Windecker infiltrated, or like with you in the legal system? Because I know you were talking to me about some of that stuff and you wanted to pass it on to my audience.
Yeah, the YDSA group is no more. It's been defunct for a few years now. Well, down in Colorado Springs, I'll go to that part. There was a group of people working on social and housing, rights, a lot of racial in-housing. And in the process, they were infiltrated by a Colorado Springs Police Department officer who was working hand in hand with the Federal Bureau of Investigations. Mm-hmm. She was placed into the group somewhere around I think summer of 2020, and she stayed in for over a year, just gathering information. And in the process, this woman who was called April Rogers was gathering information and trying to get activists to commit crimes, supplying alcohol to activists while trying to get them to commit crimes. None of the people would do it, but one of the activists that were there, she was being approached by a police officer in, a police attack at some event that was happening in the Springs, and she threw her bike down on the ground, and I can't remember exactly what she said, but it wasn't in a threatening way or anything, and they couldn't find out who she was, so they spied through her social media and a lot of other people's social media as well. And gathered information on them just to find her. And in the process, many of the male officers that were investigating this were making terrible derogatory comments about this female officer. And yeah, those people they sued on First Amendment issues, and a Biden appointed judge just recently, within the past few months, shot down their case and said it had no merit. So yeah, and even though there was all this proof that did come out in this documentary, proving that what the government did was absolutely illegal and wrong, I think we all know that at this point for decades, you can't expect the government to hold itself accountable. So they allowed those crimes to be committed, and along with my appeal as well, it was denied. So it really sucks. You always kind of feel defeated at times. But I also see why a lot of politicians are pushing for censorship on both social media and in person, because there's been too many things coming out that show that a lot of these so-called conspiracy theories aren't true. And the bad thing about that is when the government lies and withholds information and people find out the truth about it and they don't hold themselves accountable, it allows real bad people, real conspiracy theorists to come in and wreak havoc amongst all of us.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's definitely by design, because going back to just the censorship, it happened after the last time, we did the BLM interview, but Instagram rolled out that thing where now it just automatically filters out any political content from your feed. So in my case, I mean, I've been doing pretty decent on Instagram, but in my case, like, my entire following is political. So when you just filter off automatically, anybody who's not following me doesn't see my content because it's political. And I think it's just, it's not a coincidence, but it's quote unquote coincidental during like one of the most unpopular election years, at least in my lifetime. I'm relatively young to do that. But yeah, like you said, with conspiracies, it seems like with conspiracies and people leading movements, it's always really the wackiest ones that get laughed at and get the most attention. But it's like the truth that gets swept under the rug. Like if you mention BLM, nobody remembers like 2016 people marching for white Daniel Shaver or the Ferguson movements. Everybody's only thinking about those three chicks who did interpretive dance for white supremacy and bought the religion. So like if you just bring up police reform, it's laughed at by like both sides of the aisle.
Yeah, and I think it's something that's important is for people to separate themselves from BLM. Yeah. I never, I understood the meaning of it in the beginning, but I also never wanted to contribute money to it when they started asking for a lot of money on a nationwide basis. Because at that point I realized, okay, they've been taken over by both the liberal class and the conservative class, possibly, when it comes to finances. If it would have started out, kept the more organic feel, that would have been great, but I don't think that would have been capable within this country. So what would have been deemed possible, the government would have shot down like they did in every major city across the country in 2020, because that BLM movement early on was bringing people together. But over time, it turns into, I hate to compare it, but like the word woke. Yeah. Woke had a great meaning. Woke meant something, and it still does. But both the ruling classes, they took that over. Then you have a lot of people who want more clout than anything, and they took that over. So now it just has this blemish, and it's an undeserved blemish, but we've known to expect this forever, for a long time. The same thing happened during the 60s and the 70s. But the difference is now there's more communication going around. And something I can say about, a lot more younger white folks, even my age and younger, just not putting up with it. But the problem is when younger white people start to be committed to our fighting back, at that point we'll realize that our government would really abuse their own white children for standing up for us, even more than they did in the past. And I think this turns into a lot of other issues as well. As we see, the country is hell bent on, pushing for a draft to some degree. They can't get enough people to join the military. And, it's not just because people don't want to go to these bullshit wars. It's not because they don't, I guess, love their country, if that's the case. But why join a military for a government that's going to burn down your cities, lie to you about it, withhold the information in the process, and not on top of that, you have so many soldiers committing suicide every day. You have soldiers filled up in prison. You have soldiers on the street. Yeah, look at the women who are abused consistently. Why join that if your federal government is going to abuse you, especially when you blow a whistle?
Yeah.
I look at Patrick Tillman. He was a guy. I think he played safety for the Arizona Cardinals in the early 2000s or late 90s. He left because he said he wanted to go fight for his country. Regardless of what we think of that, we have to say, hey, he gave up a multi-million-dollar job where he only had to work 17, 18 weeks out of the year to go do something which he thought was right. But in the process of being over there, he realized things weren't exactly what he was being told. And when he became vocal, somehow there was a friendly fire accident that happened. So why fight for a government like that? Especially if you're a black person. Hell, I even include indigenous folks in there. Why fight for a government like that? And I advise people, if the government does reinstitute a full-on draft, say fuck it, take the prison time. You're better off taking the 5 years in prison instead of getting killed for some bullshit ass war. Because you can get killed and yeah, your family might get some money, but you can't be with your family. You can't be replaced with money. So I'd rather you go to prison, instead of fighting for this government.
Yeah, and I was kind of talking about it today, funnily enough, if you ever watched the show The Boys, but it was just like one of those media analysis things. But I think as a whole, we're kind of seeing America get more sloppy, and the speed of technology now is like way better to expose these type of things. Like we're seeing like alleged agents with U.S. passports, British passports getting caught overseas, these coups being posted on Twitter in real time. You're seeing like, and I shit on them a lot because I think some of it is cope. Like there's a heavy denial that there's actually white supremacists or like neo-Nazis or like, those adjacent people. I don't think they're a majority, but they're a number. But like even with these protests, where it's like people holding a big, swastika, like people on both sides of the aisles, you'll see like right-wing people be like, oh, okay, these are feds. And then you see people on the left like, how are they arresting the people in the Gaza encampments and beating them and tear gassing them, but they're not doing that to them, they're not going to arrest their co-workers, like those jokes and stuff like that. So I think like we're at such a point where it's like, it's a good thing and a bad thing, because it's good because we're uniting over seeing that the government is bad, but it's also a bad thing because there's so many holes to fall in you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when it comes to that, even though my views are quite left of left, I don't trust the government, so I guess you could find out if you wanted to put a name on that, you could. But I'm an anti-authoritarian. I don't trust systems. I don't trust individuals in power. I believe all power should be questioned. Any power that doesn't want to be questioned must be removed at all costs. It has to be removed. And it doesn't matter what system or ideology you believe in. If there is a power that refuses to be moved, or it's a few people in charge that refuse to get rid of their power, you're already under tyranny, no matter what your beliefs are. I'm far from a Trump supporter or a Republican. However, I do understand a lot of them are coming across and realizing, yeah, our votes probably don't mean shit. We don't want Trump. We don't want Biden. And then they're questioning, well, they probably don't have any power at all if they're bending their knee to the Blue Star State, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And
you have this big organization that basically just ruined your life off of a plot. Well, I won't say ruin your life. That's for you to say or not. But like you have this big organization that basically just does this to you and a bunch of other people just on a whim, just to, you know, see what would happen or to push an agenda or, you know, strengthen their own power.
Yeah, I think when that comes, I always advise people to look at things you don't agree with, watch people you don't like, read things you don't like, because you're going to find something in it that you'll be like, okay, well, this does make sense. How can I use this to help out my cause? But while not falling a victim to their ideology. Um, when I don't believe in the worship of ideologies or individuals and all of that. So I advise people to get information from these people, but be an anti-authoritarian at heart. If someone's trying to push their view on you harder than the truth, it might not need to be your deal. It might not need to be your thing. For instance, I like The Intercept. I like a lot of things they put out, but there are things I don't agree with. But I'll still look at it. I watch Tucker Carlson every few weeks because I don't like his interview. I mean, I don't like him as his views, but he has great interviews with people, and you'll find out things that you probably wouldn't have known in the first place. I look at Russiagate. I've never really believed it, but you watch the Putin interview. Say what we want about this guy, he goes a little more detail about Russiagate. He goes over what's happened the past 30 years. And it's not to say Russia was right in invading Ukraine, but when you're provoked enough, anybody would probably react. And that's no support for him or his regime.
Yeah.
I would say the same thing, vice versa, with anybody else. If I encroached on your neighborhood enough and I was violent amongst the way, you'd have every right to defend yourself, even if you're a piece of shit.
Yeah.
I think, probably going to rant here, I think still a lot of our discontent is being created for us.
Yeah.
Chomsky talked a lot about it, but I think it's much deeper than it was then. When you have at least 50,000 FBI informants, that's a low number. When you have these surveillance agencies in the Department of Justice that have proven that they cannot be trusted, yet they still want to tell us that they should be able to police misinformation, disinformation, or now malinformation, you're in danger. You have no rights. Americans have this idea that, we can trust the government if it's our group that we like. No, you can't. You can't trust them at all. Because if the government can create assassination plots, kidnapping plots, and still tell you that, hey, we need to decide what the truth is, you're in a very dangerous spot. You're in tyranny. You're probably worse off than whatever they can say about China. I don't think China's making false flags. I don't think Russia's making false flags. But a country or a government that is in danger of losing global power will do those things. And our government's doing that. Look at the amount of countries that are joining BRICS.
Yeah.
Look at the power of our passport. I think last year or a few years ago, it was the sixth most powerful passport in the world. Now it's below 40, I believe. I could be wrong. Countries are distancing themselves. Mexico, they're starting to say, yeah, we want you people to go back because we don't want you gentrifying our country, Other countries are doing this. African countries are saying, get your French embassy out of here, and soon enough it's going to be get your American embassy out of here. Mm-hmm. The rest of the world is not only tired of the American dollar and the overreach of the federal government, the rest of the world, the black and brown world, and a few countries like Ireland are saying, hey, we're done with this fucking global white supremacy.
Yeah.
We're done. Yeah, they're done. And the fact that you have brave white people jumping in and saying, fuck this shit, that's a big threat to them as well. As I said a few minutes ago, when the government's beating up its own white children, like they're doing on college campuses, like they're doing at protests, that the government's trying to do whatever it can to keep power, especially the surveillance state and a Department of Justice that doesn't work for either party. We just found out within the past 2 days that the Supreme Court sided with the Biden administration when it came to saying that the surveillance state can censor what we say on social media or direct social media outlets to censor certain things. The Supreme Court, and a lot of that was in bipartisanship with left-leaning, I guess, Democrat and Republican appointed justices. this is an attack on our pseudo rights. And I say pseudo rights because if they were true rights, you couldn't just take them away so easily.
Yeah, and I think also what we're seeing of I don't like painting everybody with a broad brush, right? I think there is, like, to get into my own tangent, I think there is some very good arguments against like having open borders, like wage lowering, culture classes, etc. But I think we're seeing like the far right rising in Europe, kind of like what you said, because there's this dynamic of the global South, and like you said, Ireland, like these countries of having a history of colonialism, of these coups and stuff. They're basically saying they're fed up and they're tired of, like, having to send their own, well, not, having to send their own, but the people being displaced because of all these meddling and these territory lines and these conflicts. They're also fed up. So it's like this dynamic of the people in the superpowers feeling threatened by the global South kind of taking their own terms. And you kind of see this on like on a smaller scale, like you were saying, like regardless of how people feel, like in the nuances of do it this way, do it that way. During the summer of 2020, with all those riots, there was a very real feeling of their strength in numbers, and that's why I think they had to do the informants. And even with January 6th, like in my circles, like much like you, I lean pretty left, but a lot of people on the left in my circles are saying like January 6th, the reason was stupid, but that was a great way to make. And don't
Yeah.
press me. Don't put any spyware on my phone. Whoever's listening, but that's like a great way to make politicians scared.
Yeah,
Like
it
that.
really is.
They kind of got the reminder that, like, yeah, there's way more people, and that's like compared to like our entire like American history. January 6th, like the cause of that was like a drop in the bucket, like somebody losing an election. Like if the
Mhm.
draft started like you said, like that shit would be 100 times worse.
Oh yeah, in the '70s, the Nixon administration, they had to line the entire White House with buses, city and school buses, because they thought the people were going to come in there and buy partisan shit and rip them the fuck out of there. I'm not sure if many people know that, but you can find those pictures. He was terrified, because people didn't want their friends and family going to that bullshit ass war. So you try to reinstitute a draft now, it's not going to work. It's not going to work at all. If the government wants a quick crumble, that's go ahead and get it. That's your quick crumble right there. People are enjoying that shit. And then you look at Ukraine. That's people can say what they want. My opinion is they're getting their ass whipped in this war. So that means NATO's getting its ass whipped by Russia and its allies.
Mm.
And so I think that's where a lot of this, more of this anti-Russian sentiment or anti-China sentiment is coming from. Our government's got to say, yo, if we're not winning, they're the evil people. No, we're proving that we're the evil people. At least our government is. The fact that so many countries and governments are backing away from it. But this is American. America is built on violence and oppression. It's built on colonization. I don't care what anyone says. Yeah, I don't have anything problem with Jewish people. I've got Jewish friends. I've got white Jewish friends, and they're calling this shit out as well as bullshit. It's bullshit. So the fact that America's backing a genocide, well, America conducted a genocide more than once. There's still a genocide. The government's still committing a genocide. Excuse me, a genocide against Black people, Indigenous people, people in other countries who refuse to follow along. And just so happens we're finding out that our politicians, many with dual citizenship, ones that are talking about anti-immigrant shit, are working for another country as well.
Yeah.
And that, I'm sorry.
No, I was just about to say I forgot who said it. It might have been Theodore Roosevelt, but it was like the difference between patriotism and nationalism is that, like, you don't have to be well, I'm butchering the quote, but either way, it's basically that, like, patriotism / nationalism isn't just like blindly supporting everything your country does. If you actually want to change your country and improve it, that's also a form of patriotism, because like you actually want to improve the country and see it change. So that's why, like, kind of like what you're saying, like all the finger pointing, I think it's very on purpose that anybody who's against the status quo or is against the government's action is labeled like unpatriotic, or they say like go somewhere else. Because I was also thinking about that as someone who's traveled a lot. especially with social media, how I was saying that line doesn't really work anymore. Like you could be in rural like Wisconsin and be like, well, if you don't like it here, you could. How about you go to like, I don't know, like Nigeria. But now we have social
Mhm.
media, we can see they have like cities and shit like that, or like all these countries sometimes have components that are even better than America. And like you see these people in comment sections, they'll be like, no, I'd never go to America.
Yeah, and you see so many people leave the country. They're like, "Yeah, this is amazing over here.
Yeah.
I might not have all the things I want, but I have everything I need, and a lot of the things I do want. Why not?" I think it a great thing. Something I was beginning to start to look at in 2021, which could be a reason they got interested as well. I talked about a two-pronged approach, separating from the government on the inside and the outside. If you don't have the means or the ability to leave the country, you should have groups and organizations to teach trades and different things to separate from the federal government within. If you do have the ability to leave, do the same thing, learn these trades and everything that can transfer to other countries, and you get as many people out of here as you can because you cannot save this. You can't vote yourself out of this.
Yeah.
I'm at a point now you can't march yourself out of it unless it's like in the right places, but still you wouldn't be able to march yourself out of it. This is a plane that's going down. What does America turn into? Will it be the Holy Roman Empire, Constantinople, or multiple different countries? But this isn't sticking around. It's much less than 20 years. I look at the Soviet Union for whatever we want to say about them. We see how that breakdown affected everything in the rest of the world. And now that there are other superpowers out there that can challenge America, America's trying to do whatever it can to stop that, but it's inevitable. Everything comes to an end, especially if your government's created off of genocide, war, and slavery. A lot of the other countries over there, wherever it's at, yeah, they might have a history to the in some of those things, but not to the form that America was built off of chattel slavery and off of genocide of the indigenous people there. That's a thing that America and its allies have partaken in. And many of those so-called allies have acknowledged those things, even though they're still in that fuck shit, but they're trying to back away from it.
Yeah, exactly.
But I want to go back to the immigration thing real quick, or the migration thing.
Yeah.
Um, you fuck with a people's country and overthrow their governments for decades, they have every right to come up here.
Mm.
They have every right to come up here. So when I see this far right movement and the people falling for it, I'm sitting here thinking, well, you were just talking about how you didn't want your government in these needless wars. Did you forget that these needless wars contributed to these people coming across your border? And I can look at some conservative talking points. Well, these are going to be some of these people are going to be violent people. Yeah, there's going to be people who were hurt by America that are going to come over here. Most of these people are women and children who might have been trafficked or just trying to leave a shitty place that America helped become shitty. When you put sanctions on all these countries and forbid any other countries to work with them, they're going to struggle.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just about to add, and like on the other spectrum, it's really funny because I addressed this because one commenter like tried getting a gotcha on me before, but the whole narrative of like military age men that like a lot of conservatives or like far right Europeans use is like funny because it's in line with what they say. They say like, of course, traditionally men should be providers, they should be working hard, and then when people come here or to Europe and work hard, best case scenario, they work hard and they send money back. That's like, if that's an American doing that, or a non-brown immigrant, it's like, okay, they're a hard-working family man. But then when they come over here to do jobs and send money back, then it's a military-aged man, full invasion, like a full-on invasion coming here. So I think,
Yeah.
like you're saying, like it's a lot of like narrative switching of like they don't want to address why they're here. Like, sure, there's some problems, like say culture classes or like crimes. You could look per capita. Like I'm pretty sure Hispanic immigrants commit less per capita than native United States citizens, but that's a whole other thing. But yeah, you're 100% correct. It's all about stopping the cause instead of trying to scapegoat and fearmonger the symptoms.
Yeah, and I look over here, Denver, I'm not exactly sure where you're at, but here in Denver, we have a terrible homeless problem. Then we have this huge migrant issue. And I'm sitting there thinking, I mean, the migrants are working. I mean, they might have stole those sweeties from the gas station, but they were working. They're doing something, they're upkeep, doing something. They're going to contribute to the community. But, and then it's the whole thing. And I go back to the people with dual citizenship, if you know who I'm talking about. They send money back over there. I'll just say it. Israel gets reparations while black people struggle continuously. Indigenous people struggle continuously. If America loved black and indigenous people even 5% is, even just a slight amount as much as they love Israel, we'd be doing good. But America doesn't even love its own white citizens that much. We're talking about, the government's talking about giving benefits to IDF soldiers. Well, our own soldiers who might have just served for 4 years or 3 years, they can't get much of shit. Yeah. It's not fair. And the thing is, Israel has socialism with our money. So people can look at it any way they want. They can say, well, I support them in this. Well, think about it. Mr. Conservative, you're against socialism. Why are you okay with them having socialism with your money? With your money. There is hardly any homelessness there, and homelessness for them is way different than it is for us. They don't have to stay on the street. They have everything we need with our money. And I think a lot of Americans, even like him or not, Tucker Carlson, who could be government for all we know, is even saying, yeah, they have all this stuff with our money. But you have left-wing people saying they have all this stuff with our money. How does it feel that as an American, knowing that you got to wake up every morning at 6 o'clock, go to that shitty fucking job, get the money taken out of your shitty fucking check, and that money go to your shitty government to fuck you over in a shitty way, and to pay for someone else's socialism?
Yeah.
It's cruel.
To it,
yeah. They don't have to. They all have houses. They can do anything. You have people from America, as long as they're found out that they're of that kind of Jewishness, I guess, or can, relate to the Israelis over there, they can just leave. They can have a criminal record over here, a terrible thing where they couldn't go to any other country, but they can go over there. I'm a felon, and I'm forbidden to go into certain countries, even though I shouldn't be a felon. But if I were Jewish, or of the Israeli type of Jewish, I can just leave the country.
Yeah, the birthright trips.
Yeah, it's disrespectful. It's disrespectful, not only just mainly to black and brown people in this country, but especially black people. It's disrespectful to the whole fucking country. Yeah. That they live high and mighty off of what we do, our hard work. And again, I have nothing against those people's race or anything. I don't give a fuck about that. It's the fact that you benefit off of us. And then you're some genocidal maniacs. I'll put it right there as well.
Yeah, it kind of goes into like America's hypocrisy that, we support like negative leaders, and so it's time to switch on them. Like, we say that we're protecting democracy and peace, like say in Cuba, excuse me, like in Cuba we supported Batista, and then when Batista, like, people around the globe and in Cuba and in America were like, yeah, this guy fucking sucks, they started funding Castro and Che's movement. I think it was, I always say what's that Mexican one? I always say M23 by accident. It was something
MS-13.
Yeah, MS-13, but their thing was like M something 7. But anyway,
okay.
And then they funded them, and then the coup happened, and then Castro's in power, and he's like, you know what, I'm friends with the USS, and the rest is history. But it's funny how it went from, we're helping, we support Batista. Actually, we don't support Batista. He's a tyrant. We're going to help coup him. And then the new coup is bad. So it's just stuff like that. But,
look at Iran.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm 100% for women's rights. You can do whatever the fuck we do if you can do it. I don't give a fuck. But you look at Iran. They could wear skirts. They could wear bathing suits and all kinds of things. America got so deeply involved that these women now can't even live decent lives in most cases. They can't just be themselves. America did that. America. I mean, yes, there were crazy people over there who partook in it, the extremists, but America contributed to that abusiveness towards women. And then I look at both parties, especially the Democrats, who say they love women. Well, what about those women over there?
Yeah.
That our government destroyed? You know, and
they'll put women in advertising and say girl boss, and then they'll fund a terrorist group or
yeah,
a coup.
yeah, but the rest of the world's catching on. And the sad thing is, what scares the government so much here, its own citizens are catching on.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm 39 years old. I hope I make it to 40 outside of prison. But I grew up during a time in the early 2000s when the Patriot Act comes in because people start questioning things. Um, and when that was being, put into place, that was some of the most terrifying shit to me because you heard so many people say, well, if you're not hiding, you don't have anything to hide. What is there to worry about? Maybe I don't want anybody to know that my shit is not floating. Maybe I just want to live a life, without the government peeking in. And now this, when the government can perform censorship and listen to you in your phone calls, like Edward Snowden showed, they can create a narrative like they did in 2020 and quite possibly 2021.
Yeah.
They'll create an attack. They'll lie to you. Hey, we need to do this to protect you. No, motherfucker, you did it.
Yeah.
It's like the most wildest mafia kind of shit ever. They want to offer protection. You say no, but I'm going to show you right in front of you why you need protection, but I'm going to convince you that you really need this protection also. How much safer did we get because of the Patriot Act? If anything, it got worse because those powers are now used inward for people who are trying to speak out and who acknowledge the bad things that are happening.
Yeah, exactly. And to loop back to the beginning, so what do you think your next steps are, or like the messages that you want to become more prevalent, or like just in general, like what do you think is next for yourself, the people that got affected, and America as a whole?
For me, starters, I'm looking into some other attorneys. Wanted to try to get off probation early. So if your listeners know anybody, I'm going to try that. I'm going to see if I can do some other kind of appeal. There are some quite potentially big things coming to the story next year. Can't go into detail. I would say I'm a very kind person, but I'm not a nice person. Most of my friends say I'm an asshole, but we love each other. I grew up at a time, my friends, we talk a lot of shit to each other, but if we need help, we're going to say a lot of fucked up things, but we're going to help each other out. We're not just going to be nice and smile like, oh, I hope you're going to be okay. I think what people need to do is start publicly shaming politicians. Just shame them. I mean, make jokes about them. Embarrass the fuck out of them. It's one thing to march with a sign and say something weird, but just troll the fuck out of them. A Friday night trolling of your least favorite state or federal politician. Find some people who have common issues with these people. Shame the fuck out of them. I think if you embarrass them more, what's that?
I said it's working with Elon.
Yeah, you embarrass them enough, they're going to change some things. Especially if it's a politician. Elon's a billionaire. He can do whatever the fuck he wants to. He can vanish today if he wants to. But I would say, troll him online. You've got a few thousand followers. I mean, shit, go to Phil Wise's Twitter page. Call him Chicken Phil. Call him False Flag Phil. I've got a few people here just thinking about doing it. Embarrass the fuck out of him. He's up for re-election. Go on his Twitter page, his Facebook, if you still got Facebook, his Instagram, and call him False Flag Phil Weiser. You start questioning why he didn't do anything. Embarrass the fuck out of him. I'm pretty sure a lot of your followers are from the LGBT community, and I'm gonna tell y'all right now, I'm family. That's the old school way of saying it, I guess, because I'm old. But the country was up in arms of the Club Q massacre. Those innocent people were murdered and maimed. Well, while that happened, the federal government hardly did whatever it could to investigate the piece of shit who actually murdered them. They let it happen because they were too interested in trying to cause violence in Colorado Springs and trying to get activists to perform violence. They were just trying to get people to have a house or for racial equality. They spent more time trying to create violence instead of preventing this piece of shit, from killing those innocent people. So even if you're not down for the black cause, you have to sit back and think. Out of everything LGBT people have been through for decades, hundreds of years, whatever, how does it feel knowing that family could still be here if the FBI actually did the job of preventing it instead of trying to create violence? And now no one knows the truth about what happened unless you listen and look up the information about what happened here in Colorado. Those people still be alive. That was a national story. It was all over the TV. And both parties had their opinions on it. But the Republicans, they made a question, like them or not. Why didn't the FBI stop it? Well, we know now. And on the other side, people are wondering, well, what about the gun laws? Yeah, I understand the gun laws are wild, but the FBI could have prevented it from happening. If the FBI, the Colorado Springs Police Department, would have prevented the Club Q massacre, yeah, there'd still be gun issues, but those people still be here. No matter what people think of guns, it wouldn't have happened. They had a standoff with this guy, multi-hour standoff. I think he held his grandparents hostage. How the hell was he able to go kill a bunch of people at Club Q? It was allowed to happen because they were too interested in trying to create violence.
Yeah, I remember there's been sadly a couple stories about, or multiple rather, of like informants or agents kind of taking advantage of people with mental health issues like autism too. Like I think there was a story about he may have gone to Guantanamo, or I may have darkly joked about it, but there was this autistic boy, and they were talking to him about joining ISIS, I believe it was. That was here. Done something on it, yeah, and then they got him on that. But there's also been other cases similar of them doing that. It's very crazy. That's why I always tell my audience, one, if I ever do sponsorships or ads, it's only going to be VPNs, and two, to just always make sure that like you're vetting people that you talk to online, like even me, because you never know, like if it could just be somebody who's there to derail or like get you caught up in something, or
Yeah. And I'd like to add something to that story. There are two instances of that happening here in Colorado, and in both cases, I believe the judge refused to let the alleged criminals to be out on bail. And there was another case in another state as well. But these three individuals, they were around 15 years old when the FBI started targeting them. These are minors. And excuse me, but this seems a little pettish to me. And the FBI has a history of working with some real sick people. So just think, you're a parent.
I just searched it up. Sorry to cut you off. It was.
Oh, you're good.
It was Hamza.
You're good.
Mashkour.
Yeah, just think you're a parent in America. You're already overworked. You might be working 2 jobs. But while you're working these 2 jobs, men, grown adults, are talking to your teenage children, trying to get them to do terrible things without even communicating with you, without telling you anything. And they built their heads up so much that as soon as they turn 18, one of them tried to go on a plane, and the other ones were like, no, I didn't want to do anything to do with it. The FBI lied. They targeted these children. The kids should be off limits no matter what. Yeah. No matter what your views are, kids should be off limits. They were predators on these children. They were trying to get them to do things that they weren't supposed to do. Then when they turned 18, they were arrested. And the judge says, yeah, I can't let you out on bail. And even though the truth comes out, these 3 children, who are now adults because they're over 18, are looking at decades in prison. Yeah, children. And so if anyone, if you're listening, you might not care about the LGBT community. You might not care about the Black Lives Matter movement of summer of 2020. Do you care about kids? Do you care about the FBI targeting your children? Because they're doing it to white people also. They're doing it to everybody. It's just if it doesn't fit the narrative, it's not going to come on major television. It's not going to be on the internet that much because it's going to be censored. The FBI has a problem with kids as well. Look at the whole ordeal with Larry Nassar. They withheld information. One of the job of the United States Olympic team. The prosecutors refused to charge those FBI agents who lied in documents, who forged signatures. I could be wrong with that. And they protected it in many cases. This man who was abusing these children, they let him down again. And then you can go to Epstein and all this other shit. Our government has no merit. I'm going to say something. The courts absolutely have no merit. The one thing that's supposed to separate America from every other country are our courts. And if our courts are hiding assassination plots, targeting of children, and things of the sort, you know they're hurting everybody else. If they're willing to hide things that severe and that major, they're screwing the person who got caught with a gram of whatever to hell because they're not going to give them all the information they need. Yeah. Someone could be innocent, but they're not going to give them the information. They're going to withhold it. And it's easier, I've said this many times, it's easier to build a toothpick ladder to the moon, a stable toothpick ladder to the moon, than to get a federal prosecutor on prosecutorial misconduct. I think people need to start focusing on prosecutors even more than the FBI agents. Because why are the prosecutors pursuing the cases? At any point, the prosecutors could say, yeah, we're going to investigate the FBI because this is wrong. That's unlimited power. So so the majority of federal plea deals, they're like 95% and higher for federal prosecutors. They get those. So over 95, so many people are getting screwed over because they're not going to get the correct information. They're not going to get a fair shot because prosecutors know that they have immunity. They can do whatever they want. They care about how much time they can give you for their resumes. So we can look at the FBI all we want, but I think, excuse my wording on this, target the prosecutors in a public setting. Online, why is this prosecutor pursuing this charge? Well, I heard about this. Why are you doing this? You put pressure on them, you probably get a lot more done than putting pressure on the FBI.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are the people who actually press the charges. At any point, they can say, hey, FBI Detroit, FBI Michigan, FBI Colorado, we're not going to do this. We're going to press charges against your agents. So instead of just pushing all that hatred and everything or pressure on the surveillance agencies, put it on the prosecutors. If you see a crooked case like mine, or like the ones of the guys in Michigan, like their views or not, call out their prosecutors publicly online, in person. That's how you might get something to change to some degree. They might think twice about throwing a book at somebody.
Well said.
Especially when their kids find out that, hey, mommy or daddy let a child molester run amok in Denver, or run amok in Michigan, or Chicago, and they protected it from everyone to know. If I would have known my parents were like that, I probably wouldn't like them too much.
Exactly.
That's where the public pressure needs to go.
I completely agree.
Sorry about the soapbox. I told you I was going to go there.
No problem. That's why I had you on. So thank you for everything, and I should have it edited and everything. I'm looking at Sunday. So
Sunday? Okay. And what I'll do, I'll send you a few articles as well if you wanted to mention those articles. It's like I said, the majority of my views lean left. But growing up in a Marine Corps town like I did, when people I cared about or people I didn't even know came back fucked up, missing arms and legs, and they were telling us that the world was bullshit, that's kind of what radicalized me. But even though I'm left leaning, that didn't bother me from opening the door for somebody and say, hey, sir, how you doing? Yes, ma'am, can I help you out? Getting to know somebody. Yo, you want to shoot the shit? You want to have a beer? You want to go smoke some weed? What? I think if people stop looking at it as just left and right, they probably realize, oh, shit, there is no left or right in many cases. It's just us and them.